Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar, Level Up Your Music with Lee Cabrera and Vincent DiPasquale, FaderPro founders. So we're gonna do just a quick introduction. I'm gonna go first and share that I'm Julia, the Pixabay Music Community Manager, and I'm thrilled to have you all with us. So a little bit about me. I've been a professional musician for the past 10 years. I've been touring and recording drums for different projects here in Spain, and also worked in festivals and record labels. And today I'll be your host for this session alongside Lee Cabrera and Vincent DiPasquale. So go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Nice to be here. We're excited to be in this webinar with Pixabay. This collaboration has been very exciting. And of course, I'm joined with my co-founder and FaderPro and one of my best friends, Stephen Lee. We're here in the main FaderPro studio headquarters here in Denver, Colorado. And we're just really looking forward to this. The response has been great with not only the webinar, but with the remix contest and this whole exciting kind of campaign we're doing in partnership with Pixabay. So I'm just excited to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun today.
Yes. Julia, I didn't know you were a drummer and
Yeah.
worked with a band
I
and
know.
toured in festivals. That's amazing. We got to get you in the studio. Hi,
Yeah.
everybody. Lee Cabrera here. I'm a co-founder with Vince at FaderPro and music producer and DJ since I was 19 years old, and very excited to meet you all and share some expertise on my end and Vince on his end, and listen to some great music and provide some great feedback, and hope that this is a learning experience as well as a creative experience for you all.
Exactly. And, FaderPro exists to help anyone at any level, but certainly people that are really, making music and putting it out there, not only in the world, but for a company like Pixabay, where there's this great community of producers making music, finding outlets for the music, but having, the quality piece of it sounding as best as it can, putting it out there. And today's such an exciting time for not only learning music production, and that's why we started FaderPro, is to really give everyone kind of untethered access to all the information and the technical information at a really high level. No matter where you are at in your production skill level set, you can find really great things. And so the education landscape and the technology that exists to make great music literally from anywhere in the world, and with laptop and software, it's never been more exciting. And then once you make the music, to now have outlets like Pixabay and all these great things to share our music, it's just such an exciting time. So we always love connecting with music producers that are really, making music day in and day out and wanting to make the music sound better. So again, we're just excited to be here to share all that with you all, and review some tracks, maybe do some Q&A, and just be of service however we can to help you make better music, basically.
I think
Yeah.
everybody wants to be heard. There's a lot of really great talent out there, and it's kind of difficult to get heard these days, let alone get
Yeah.
signed. And so the contest feature is going to be really fun for us to sift through a lot of demos and mentor one of the winners and all the really cool prizes that Roland and Lander and Pioneer DJ. And so I think that's a vital piece. Fader Pro and our team just started doing demo feedback as well, and it just really buzzed a lot of our customers and producers and artists, and said, "Wow, I get to have a demo get listened to and get provided feedback." So I think that's a difficult thing to get heard these days. So we're happy to join with Pixabay and let you guys be heard, and go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exciting. Thank you so much. We're very happy. And it's my pleasure to host this great webinar with you. And so let's get started right away. In this webinar, we will dive into the careers of Lee Cabrera and Vincent DiPasquale, very inspiring careers. We will explore how they got started, the challenges they faced, their biggest successes, and the valuable lessons you can take away from their journeys. Then they will also share what makes the track industry ready and what you should keep in mind when pitching to labels or industry professionals. And finally, Vincent and Lee will host a live music review of the tracks that you have submitted during the sign up, giving a real-time feedback and insights. And also, if time allows, which we hope so, we will end with a Q&A session. So you'll have your questions ready for them. So first of all, career journey and industry insights. Would you like to start, Lee?
Sure. Career journey started very, very young. And I started working at Strictly Rhythm Records as a teenager. I moved to New York and was going to business college, and suddenly got this wonderful job and was getting paid to be around what I thought at the time was the best record label in the world, with bringing artists of Little Louis Vega and Kenny Dope, Little Louis Vega, Frankie Knuckles, Eric Murillo, Roger Sanchez, Josh Wink, some of the best for me to be able to work at that imprint and get paid when I probably would have done it for free, was really cool. It sort of told me right then and there that, kind of guilty by association, that if I was going to be in this really great creative environment, there was going to be an opportunity for me to be heard, which I think is the big mission statement here, to be heard. And so, yeah, it happened very, very quickly. My first ever remix was a classic record from Strictly Rhythm itself, which Eric Murillo and Little Louis Vega did, called Little Mo Yin Yang Reach. And it was my first essential new tune on Sir Pete Tong's Radio 1. And it's a great story, and we'll get into that detail another time. But I almost got fired for it. Anyway, it's a funny story. But anyway, the record finally came out and did very, very well. So I had instant success quite early. And when you get that heard from, in this case, the biggest dawn in dance music history, Pete Tong at Radio 1, and you become on his radar, so to speak, it's pretty instantly gratifying to make you feel like you can do a lot more. My first ever original record actually was broke by Pete Tong too. So there's wonderful, and ended up being probably the biggest record I've ever produced in my life. This is how I met Vince. Vince did the mixing and engineering on the record. He threw me out of the studio a few times, but it all happened for me very, very young, and it's something that I don't think happens in a lot of this business. It really doesn't. But there's also some Achilles heels to doing that. Meaning, you make this big, huge record, and you think that following it up is going to be easy. Well, it's not. And I know that that's not the reason for the webinar, but the true value is here that I felt like I was almost pigeonholed with this one record for a long time in my career. I never really tried to admit that as an artist. I just was instantly boomed and toured the world and had this record that just would never ever go away. And then they put a vocal on it and it went number one again. And it was just this mega hit that you kind of say like, okay, great, what's next? And I ended up making a record that was completely opposite of it. And from a marketing music business perspective, was all wrong. I should have made maybe the stepbrother, the cousin of that, and stay in that Latin house piano driven vibe, like maybe a Junior Jack and Kid Cream did with a lot of their records, which were the kind of mentor sounds for me when I was growing up. That defected Strictly Rhythm, in this case Creedence and CR2 sound, that UK driven European sound, which is what I was looking for. So I mean, there were wonderful things that happened instantaneously as doing well in the music business. But then there are those hurdles of how can it wasn't the music that I was providing as follow-ups wasn't being received at that grandioso scale. It was doing well, and I was doing well, but that is something that always will stick with me. And one of those industry insights of like, hey, remember, this is the music business, and it's only what you've done lately. Yes, but remember, everybody, I had to keep reminding myself, the whole world would love to be in your position to have that mega hit, but you kind of feel like you're in this writer's block, so to speak, and you're forcing stuff, and you have to make sure that you stay in that creative zone. That was a big insight for me that happened very, very early.
Inspiring. So many takeaways already. All right. Is there
Vince?
anything else you would like to share?
I can kind of catch up there with my side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in a very musical family, and played some instruments from an early age, like piano and guitar, but I never really had the discipline, honestly, to practice. So very early on, it was clear that I wasn't going to be a true musician in the sense of like a virtuoso or someone who really, knew music theory, for example. And so, as a young kid, I did learn piano and guitar, but um, very early on, it was like, yeah, I'm not going to be in the band thing. And so, somewhere in the high school age, kind of when I was a teenager, I started to get into the technology of music. And back then, MIDI was kind of really just burgeoning as a way to sequence songs and kind of get in the computer a little bit, in this early technology with MIDI. And so I was just a little kid experimenting and twisting knobs. There was obviously no FaderPro at the time or education, really, even educational programs at schools. I think there were one or two, but I was just a kid having fun with music gear. And then went through and I actually got a business degree first, but all the while was doing like DJing, and I got very into electronic music at this same time because all the electronic musicians at the time, they were sequencing everything, sequencing the synthesizers with MIDI and using all the technology that I was kind of dabbling with. And so plus I thought it was a cool cutting edge sound. And so I became completely hooked on electronic music and loved it. And at that time was DJing a lot and very entrenched in the electronic music scene. Um, and then kind of fast forward a little bit, and now I'm out of college, moved to Florida, and was kind of trying to find my way. I worked at a record shop selling vinyl. I went back and got an audio engineering degree at the same time. So then I was actually like I had the piece of paper saying I was a quote unquote audio engineer, but didn't have a ton of experience, but I had some knowledge. And a friend of mine called me in Florida and said, "Hey, I have this guy. His name is Albert Cabrera, and he needs to mix a record and he needs a studio." And I had an analog console at the time, and I had built up a little studio in my house. And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to meet him." So he comes over and brings this record, Shake It. And that was the first like legitimate work that I actually mixed, for real, was, Steven and Albert's record, Shake It. And it was through an
Yeah.
analog console, and it was amazing because I learned so much through that process. But we mixed the record, and kind of the rest is history. But that's how I met Steven and Albert, and that became a friendship and a professional collaboration that's lasted, all these years. And of course, then we move on to Fader Pro. And so after that initial, mix of Shake It, and then doing some other things with them and kind of engineering a lot of those Lee Cabrera records, which was just so much fun. At the same time, I got hired by a big studio in Miami called the Hit Factory Criteria. And so I was a staff engineer there. And so the Hit Factory Criteria, which is now just called Criteria Recording Studios, and they're still around. They've been around since the 50s, and it's a legendary studio. And I was very
Yeah.
fortunate to get a job there. And so I was a staff engineer recording, which was mainly like, tracking vocals, recording vocals for a wide variety of genres. So pop music, country music, tons of hip hop. So everybody from Lil Wayne, Timbaland, Justin Timberlake, a lot of these big names that were coming through this
Wow.
big studio. I was kind of the staff engineer that would work on all these sessions. So that's where I really cut my teeth in terms of knowing the technology, but then shifting into where I really knew how to apply it and get the results, at a very high level, being in that environment of all those big artists. And so over time, that those two worlds collided, meaning my love for electronic music and all the stuff I was doing at home in my home studio, and then all the engineering work I was doing on all the commercial music with the higher profile artists at the Hit Factory. Once I became, had better relationships with those artists at the studio, and one of the main relationships was the Timbaland team. Um,
Wow.
they started to, be into electronic music and know that I liked electronic music. So I started remixing all of these artists that I was engineering at the Hit Factory, um, and some other artists outside. So I started to do all these commercial club mixes, which married my love of electronic music, but also my passion for pop music and cool music. So did for about a decade, did a bunch of remix work, which was kind of my bread and butter, and then of course the Lee Cabrera stuff, and it was really a great time. And then that was kind of my world for for about, 10, 11 years. And then that's when Steven, I think, was on a flight home from a DJ gig and was sitting in like first class or something. And some businessman was looking at this young DJ on his laptop, and they struck up this conversation. And Stephen can correct me if I'm missing any details, but this businessman was blown away that DJs fly around the world playing music and like, oh my gosh, this electronic music. And so Stephen called me. He's like, hey, I had this conversation, and it'd be cool to like teach people this craft of making electronic music and DJing, and that born FaderPro.
We shared the same question that I would get from every artist that would say, or business person on a plane, boy, it would be really cool to sit in the studio and watch you work. Well, Vince, being an SAE grad and then an SAE professor as well, he would get the same thing from his students at SAE and say, we just wish we could get in the studio and sit and watch. So suddenly we had this commonality that was a real big thing, and that's what everybody wants to do. Well, we can't do that with everybody. So we said, well, why don't we just put cameras in the studio and capture our screen like we're doing right now? And luckily we were way ahead of the game, because when everything started to kick off and post COVID and during COVID, of course, we were at the top of the top with being able to provide artists an outlet to make some money, and also provide all of you less boredom and a way to find a creative outlet during our shutdown period. But yeah, great story, and he's very PG about his accolades, but that's okay. We can keep going. I think some of the other stuff that's important, and even though I'm going to read it and regurgitate it, Vince and I did this, the music business is what you put into it. So stay patient and stay creative. If you feel like it's starting to feel like work, that's okay. But as long as you remain in a creative space, I mean, it's an easy thing to say and a hard thing to do, I don't know how many times I don't know how many thousands of records that we have on our hard drive, like, I always come to the table into the studio when I work with people that I've never worked with before. I'm like, give me the stuff that's never been heard in like a year. And trust me, when you send me all that stuff, I'm going to find some diamonds in that rough, because we're always about like, what did we make yesterday? When I walk into the studio, one of the things that I do that I know he knows, and when I was working with Scott Storch, I walked in the Scott Storch's studio through him and a connection, and he was playing the most banging. He was doing some EDM stuff, and he did some stuff with Redman, and he was playing the most banging stuff. He didn't know me from anything. Clearly knew me, but so when he finally said, okay, it's now your turn to play some of your stuff, I played some stuff that was 6, 7 years ago, because I knew I wasn't going to compete with his high energy EDM at that time. And I wanted to tweak his brain and create a little vintage for him, and he was listening, and I pulled up some like Prida, which is Eric Prydz, as we know. I pulled up some Mode Hooker, which is like a alias from Steve Angelo, some really twisted beats from back in the time, even like Grindhouse from Dubfire, which was also a Radio Slave record, that Dubfire from Deep Dish. So he was just looking at me like, but when I go into the studio, I don't try to make the next Beatport cousin of that record.
Yeah.
I go into the studio and I bring in my top records that I was playing peak hour at that time from 6, 7 years ago, and I drop it into the studio, and he's seen it. And we pull it up and we're like, how can we go use this as a reference point where it sounds familiar, but it also sounds brand new? So I think those are key things. Another one, it's hard to be judged on your creative things, but try not to take it personally. Again, easy to say, tough to kind of deal with, right? So I dealt with it early on when my Shake It record wasn't spitting out the same kind of performance as that, and I had to realize, hey, that's okay. They're still doing okay. They're still doing great. You just think that you're going to keep riding this amazing wave, and reality is reality at the end of the day. So,
Correct.
yeah. So, I mean, some of these insights that we've shared with you, Julia, are easy to say, but if you can kind of apply them while you're in the studio, and then just remember, this is the music business. Like I learned very, very young, and I had a manager and a great lawyer, and the same lawyer that we've had for 20 years. Learn to read these contracts, read the agreements. Don't just try to immerse yourself in all things the music business, right? Not just the cool things, because it's hard to read these agreements, but it's nice knowledge is power in anything that you do, no matter what occupation. So it is a very creative outlet. But when you don't, when you're kind of stuck in the creative, it's kind of cool to go over here and learn a little bit more, put on a different hat and read those agreements, read those contracts, shadow calls when you're on with your lawyers while they're talking about certain things. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. Read agreements online, read them all day long, and learn what these key points are in knowing the music business, because it makes you a scholar at the end of the day in all assets. So
Totally. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. All right. So some real gems in there. I hope you're all taking notes because this is really valuable. Now we'll go into what makes the track industry ready. This is something that our community wants to know, because many of them might be in this uh, stage in which they want to go professional, they want to go all in, they have been putting a lot of intention and hard work on their tracks. But what separates someone from keeping making music to go and get signed by a label, for example, or sound on the radio or go on tour as you did? So please let us know.
Yeah, I think I'll start with this one. And I think starting with doing your homework, really knowing your song, where you're trying, what the target is. Okay. So this means genre. This means where do you think it fits? Where are you aiming for in terms of a sound? Yes, like Steven said, it has to be unique. It has to be you. It has to be authentic. It has to be something that excites you. If it doesn't excite you, then the chances of it exciting other people are very low.
Totally.
And if it excites you, it's art at the end of the day. And so art is very subjective. So even if it excites you and you love it and you play it for 20 people, and 10 like it and 10 don't like it, that's just the way this works. We know that. But again, the core of that foundation is that you like it. But back to the homework thing, I think really where a lot of people, it's not that they miss it, it's just maybe they don't spend enough time, or they struggle with like an honest reflection on like, where am I aiming this thing to land? Okay.
Mhm.
And then making sure that it lands there. And I think where it needs to land, like I already mentioned, is genre. Where does it kind of fit in the music space? Are you doing a piece for Pixabay that you're hoping is a TikTok bed that someone's going to use for their reel that may go viral? Okay, cool. So there's parameters there. We know that it's very short. We know that the hook, the attention grabber has to come immediately. That's a very different exercise when you're putting, let's just talk about Pixabay. You're putting a music bed up on Pixabay that you're hoping is a TikTok viral thing, and it's 1 minute long. We know that the first 30 seconds has to grab people and keep them. I mean, if you don't get them in the first literally 5 seconds in that environment, you've lost them. But if you're doing a song that you want to pitch for a longer piece of content, like a video trailer or something that is 3 or 4 minutes long, then okay, again, where are you aiming it? And then studying those references, like Steven said, to know what is the typical arrangements of these. And it's not that you're going to copy them, it's just to make sure that if you're aiming your music at a particular target, that you are really clear on the target and you're honest with yourself to say, okay, as I listen to these other references and I listen to mine, there's still a disconnect. Or I can listen to the references or listen to other things in that particular genre or style, and I feel really confident. So that's when you would know, all right, I feel strong and I think the record's ready. It's now ready for public consumption and public opinion. And then at the end of the day, that's up for grabs. And then you just keep doing that process, and I think that's where some people, they get a little too deep in, my record is unique and it doesn't sound like any genre and I'm unique. That's great, and I respect that. But at the end of the day, it has to fit somewhere. And the people in the business, talking about the music business, they are looking for it to fit. And even people that are pulling sound beds for their TikTok video, it needs to fit
Yeah.
in what they think a TikTok video bed should sound like. So, if you're going after um like a dance thing,
Mhm.
then it has to be dancey. If you're going after a travel a travel vlogger on TikTok and it's cinematic and it's dramatic and it like, you know, study that stuff. Really, really, really study that stuff. And then the second thing I'll say beyond knowing where it's going to land is obviously the technical side. Okay. And the good news is that the hardest thing to teach is creativity. You know, that's very hard to teach because we all have different tastes. What I might like in sound design, you might, Julia or Stephen, have different opinions. That's wonderful. So, but it's hard to teach. Now, if you have a good song idea, now you need to make it technically sound good. That means, is it loud enough? Does it have good tonal balance? Does the low end translate? You know, how is everything from a technical perspective? The good news is that's pretty easy to teach. It takes time to practice. Don't get me wrong. It's not easy always to do, but it is very teachable. It is a
Yeah.
process that you can learn. And we have tons of videos on FaderPro that really teach this workflow checklist that you can say, all right, the song is creatively done. Now let me go through the quote unquote checklist. Let me look at tonal balance. Let me look at my low end. Let me look at, you know, stereo width and overall loudness. Those are kind of the four main buckets that you can reference your tracks and say, okay, mine's loud enough, you know, and we've got meters and we've got technology that can help us navigate that. So that's kind of it, is really knowing your target, where you're trying
Yeah.
to land your music, and hitting those technical sides. That's when you know the song is ready. And then you put it out there, and then ultimately when it's ready is when people start to nibble on it and download it off Pixabay or stream it, and then it starts to grow because people like it, and that's the ultimate test. And you know, for every 10 records that you put out there, if one or two really bubbles up to something really awesome, then you're ahead of the game. The key is just consistency, like everything.
Exactly. So it's like, first of all, you need to have like a lot of clarity, right, on what you are looking for as your goal. And from there, build from there. Of course, you need creativity. You need to be authentic. And more nowadays, I think
Yeah.
so. It's very important. And it's a trait that I truly respect. When I see someone who's authentic, I'm like, full respect. I admire you, you know, because being authentic takes courage as well. And and I relate this to what Lee said, that you have to be open to take critique, you know, and to learn from
Yes.
others. But you have to also be vulnerable and show, hey, this is my music. This is what I like doing. Let's see how we can work it out and make it industry ready if that's a path that I want to pursue, right? And
Absolutely.
it's also, I was thinking now that you've been somewhere saying all of this, like it's very important to think if you want to make like a TikTok viral type of song, or if you want to land maybe a synchronization for a Hollywood film or a TV show. No, it's a different approach. And this also reminds me of when it comes to sound engineering, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's also very important if you want to, for example, your song to be mastered for Dolby Atmos, it's going to be different than if you want your track to be on a vinyl. So you need like different masters, right? When it comes
Absolutely.
to
Yeah. Right.
the actual physical sound that you will get, or if it's for streaming. So it's always very important to know what you want in any part of the production of your song. And when it comes to the career, it's very important also to listen to people who have already done what you want to achieve. So in this case, I think it's very important that now the audience that is here and people who will be listening to this on YouTube, it's very important to listen to professionals like Vincent and Lee, because this is a kind of Vincent that you don't get from a Google search. That's the truth, because this is honest feedback based on real experience. And that's the most valuable thing.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff. Good
yeah,
stuff.
amazing. I don't
Yeah.
know if you also want to add something else as
Yeah,
well.
I think it's
Yeah.
very important to know your strength. I know that my strength as an artist is not mixing and mastering. I know that my strength is the creativity part, right? I know when to tap out and delegate, right? I don't need to be the all thing, knowing that there are resources out there. There are. Vince is one of them. Other mix engineers, Lander can do mastering for you. You know, we have mixing and mastering courses specifically that do very, very well on FaderPro, because some of that stuff is, if maybe mixing and mastering is your thing, cool.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a need and a necessity for you as well. You know, so it's kind of like know what you want to do. I mean, I remember my agent saying, "Do you want to be the guy that's in the studio making this music, or do you want to tour the world?" I'm like, "I want to do both." And he's like, "It's going to be very, very difficult." And the best of the best of the best, the top 100 guys and girls that are doing what they're doing right now are not doing it all on their own. They're as
No.
good as
Yeah.
their teams, and that's very, very important. So you kind of have to figure out that role when things really start to go, you know. And as a youngster, I was trying to control everything. That's why I got kicked out of the studio by him. So, you know, and I was like, "Where's this? And where's this delay?" And it's like, you know, you have to, yeah, you just know initially at least what you're really excited about, even if it's DJing, even if it's, and then a layer down from that is, what do I really want to do? Do I want to do sync music? Do I want to do dance music? Do I want to do synthwave music? Do I want to do lo-fi? You know, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You can start as a lo-fi producer because it's cool, right? And you're like, cool, I got this. But then you might migrate 2, 3 years from now under the same name or as many names as you want to be a tech house DJ or producer or a
Totally.
trance producer. Explore your journey and have fun with it. You know, as much as it was kind of forced on me that I was going to be this no matter what. Remember, you can change your name. You can create a little alias, which I've done as well.
Yeah.
And you can create little identities. But once
Yeah.
you know your DAW and you're really, you know, it's like we all want to do the 360 on the
Yeah.
snowboard, right?
Yeah.
Immediately. But we don't even know how to get off the damn chairlift. So, you know, let's get our training wheels off. And so yeah, those are some, I mean, we could go on all day, but yeah, I think there's some really golden things to hopefully provide
Yeah.
to everybody listening.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, exactly right. And again, just to kind of bring it back to the simplest answer to the question of what makes it industry ready, two things. You're very happy with it creatively. It's not perfect.
Mhm.
Forget perfection, but it's the best you can do, and you like the idea. Like every time you hit play,
Mm.
you get that, I like this. And then technically it's loud enough and it's, got all the technical bits.
Yeah.
And then put it out there and go create something else. And if the technical bits, meaning making it loud enough and mixing it, if that's your challenge, then like Steven said, I think there's so many resources out there. And while, money doesn't grow on trees, you have to then decide, do I want to, and it's very good, it's very important what Steven said. Do I want to focus on making music and then maybe delegating the technical part, even in the short term? That'll take a little bit of budget, but there's tons of resources out there that can be economically done. Or,
Yeah.
no, I like this and I want to be a craftsman. So I want to spend the time and invest the time to learn the technical bit. Then, there's resources out there. Of course, there's YouTube, there's FaderPro, which, our whole thing is just really trying to meet you where you're at. And I do a lot of mentoring for FaderPro, and even the most advanced producers are still coming and saying, I just need that last 2%
Yeah.
of technical ability. But they want to do it all themselves, and that's totally fine. But that is a longer path than, producing and then getting help on the technical side. And either way, it's going to cost you something. It's either going to cost you a little bit of money to get someone to technically make it sound good and you focus on creation, or it's going to cost you time. So you just have to decide, what do I want to invest? My time to learn the technical, or a little bit of money in the short term until my mixes get better. And I think that's really kind of the best that we can say about like when stuff is industry ready, and when you're ready to really have a complete ecosystem where from creation to finished master, you've solved for all the pieces to get there.
Totally. And then you can replicate it and just be consistent and be creative.
100%. Then that's the name of the game. Repeat, 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 repeat. And for
Yeah.
every 10 that you make, 1 or 2 might bubble up into something cool. You're still ahead of the game, right? Like for every hit record from any major artist, there's 50 that get stuck in the computer that never see the light of day. And so prolific creation on a constant basis and letting that cream rise to the top, that little thing you did last week that just is stuck in your head. Oh, I'm going to go back to that. These are important things.
Yeah, you can't teach tenacity. You can be the best producer on planet Earth, but it's tough to get heard these days. So this is why it's a key component. Being at the right place at the right time, going to the conferences, going to nightclubs, giving your music, using Hype Edit, for example, which is really, really on fire. Using your SoundCloud tool, everybody can be accessible with Instagram now. So following something on Instagram, I'm on TrackStack now. So, I still run into kind of log jams with release schedules of the greatest labels, and do I release it over here, and do I release it, and creating a buzz on a record, which is important. There's ways that our resources, as somebody that doesn't have a million people following them, can do. Get your technical right, but again, remember, know everything about the business. Get your creative strategy, get your marketing strategy, don't be afraid to hammer people. I get demos sent to my Instagram all the time, and I do my best, because do unto others. I want to listen to them, and I want to at least give feedback on them. You don't want to be in that dead space for people. So we have access to everybody now. So, and
Yeah,
I do
that's
the
true.
same. I've just because I've had a wonderful career, and it doesn't mean that you still don't run into people not getting back to you. So
Yeah.
being tenacious, you can't teach, knowing that this
Yeah.
is what you want to do no matter what, and achieving it no matter what is a work ethic thing, not an artist thing, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And if I could just add one last thing, by
Yeah,
the way,
please.
it's obviously clear we could talk about this for hours and days,
Yeah.
which we don't have here. But I do think it's important to say this last piece of, a lot of music creators, they focus on the creation process, which is great. But we really, and Steven mentioned it, getting it out there, that takes a lot of time to really get your stuff out there, not on not one place, in lots of places, SoundCloud, Pixabay, your Instagram, like getting it out there, and managing all of that takes time. And so what I often tell in my mentoring sessions is, whether you're doing music full time or whether you have so many hours per week, okay, whatever your chunk of time is, find a rhythm where you are spending a serious percentage of that in the process of getting it out there. Okay. And I find a lot of people, they're so focused on the creative process, which is great, but then it's like they just upload it and kind of move on,
Yeah.
and that's cool. No, you have to babysit that. You have to put it up. You have to like put it and promote and get it out there. And so I think delegating your time between, let's say 30%, and I'm just kind of making this up, you'd have to find out what's right for you. 30% of your weekly studio time is, how am I getting my stuff out there and heard by people on multiple platforms, and managing that? And then what are my new ideas and creative? And you might be in a cycle where I create for a month and I got 10 songs, and then I spend a couple weeks promoting it, or it might be a weekly rhythm. That's up for you, but really taking the time to invest again to get it out there, and be a constant push, which is hard for some of us because we just drop it up there on SoundCloud and hope people just show up, to listen to it. So that's the last thing I'll say, kind of about managing your time to now
Yeah.
get your songs out there and heard, and Pixabay is a great resource for that too.
Totally. Yeah, Pixabay is great for that as well. And it's very important. We also did some webinars previously about promotion and marketing for artists and branding for artists, for musicians, because this is very important as well. And it's part of the whole piece that I think musicians have to keep in mind nowadays. And this relates to the next part actually of the webinar, which is the live music review and feedback. So now we will focus on the demos that some of you submitted. And this is a very rare chance to get professional input on your tracks. So even if it's not your song being played, I really encourage you to listen closely, because their tips could help you improve too. And the way we will do this is that we will hear some tracks and we will call out each artist as we go. Just a heads up, we know that not everyone could make it today because of the time zone differences. So whether you are here live or watching the replay on YouTube, you'll still get to hear the feedback, which is the most important thing. Now I'll stop sharing my screen so that you can share the audio.
Awesome. Here we
Let's
go. So
go.
I'm going to mute my microphone. Here we go.
Congrats.
Track, what we're going to do is talk about what we liked about it, and then also talk about what we feel, if anything, could be improved, right?
Perfect.
Jiggler, that was super cool. The first thing that I heard when I heard this track, I think probably the throbbing eighth note bass line and the very synth wavy was the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling. I don't know, maybe text us if you saw that film, but very Kavinsky, very Cliff Martinez, but super cool. Flume in there, Justice with the drums. Those are the creative things that I heard. I thought that you had us from bar one, and it stayed there the whole time. I think it's a perfect track for, like, like I said, a film, a TV, very synth wavy. It actually could be ready for a great vocal as well. It's just wide open for a vocal with all the key changes. So if you wanted to explore that, okay, what do you do for a vocal? You can use AI for vocals. You can do your own vocals. You can use a sample pack for vocals. But there's some, I think the next step would be, and you might say, no, I don't really want a vocal. That's fine. As a producer, I'm always looking to, like, wow, that instrumental, it's tough to have an instrumental that's so catchy and hooky and fun. And so it's like, okay, great. I got you there. Now maybe it's time to add a vocal, but a really solid and very well produced. Vince will probably more talk about the technical stuff, but I'll talk creative stuff a little bit more, and he'll because that is his expertise. But go ahead.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about the link not working for some people in a minute. But just while we're listening to this track, I mean, again, from the beginning, the drums, the power and the weight and the production of the drums is so tight. And again, I think, like Steven said, I'm kind of reminded of Justice and these really powerful hitting drums. So excellent job on the drums, fantastic job producing those. The other thing that stands out immediately, besides the drums just impacting really strongly, is the groove and the rhythm and the tempo. The way that this thing flows, okay, and the tempo of it. I mean, it just locks you in to this groove so fast. Even the melody of the synth, the way that the melody of the synth, the drums, and the overall tempo, the way that that rhythm plays together in an overall vibe is awesome. So, honestly, I think there's not a lot to be said on the technical side, and even really the creative side. I mean, this track is, I mean, I can't remember. I think this might be one that was Spotify. I can't remember. That might be out there. I mean, great, it's out there. Now, besides just sitting here and saying, okay, it was great, let's move on. You know, if I nitpick, and this is just a producer nitpick, and you can take it or leave it, and it is not something I say, oh, this track needs this 100%. But I think one thing that might be interesting to experiment is some things in the upper frequencies. Okay. Now I like how it doesn't have a lot of cymbals. There's not a lot of top end in the drums, because that really brings the strength and the weight of the lower end, which is so powerful. And the synth is such a great frequency range, that it really carries the lead line and the top line of the synth, that it hooks you. So mission accomplished in producing a great track. But I'm a big fan of having something, even if it's a texture, like an ambient texture or something that's more high-end frequency related. It doesn't have to be a drum. That's going to help just kind of be in that upper air frequency range. So something like 6K and above, if we're talking technical. It might be a tiny little cymbal or a tiny little shaker that doesn't grab too much attention. It's not stealing away anything from the party. It just adds a little bit of that sheen in the top end. I'd be curious to hear what something like that would sound like in a track like this. But that is like the only nitpick thing that's just a personal curiosity, a creative thing, more than like, oh, this track needs more compression on the bass and low end. I mean,
good work.
Yeah,
Good work, Jiggler. Good work,
very
buddy.
good work. So now we're going to go to the second one. Here we go. So I'm going to mute my mic and we're going to take a listen to this one. There we are.
Cool.
Yeah, mic's on.
Talk about express yourself. That's a creative gem. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that record to me, because I really feel like Avicii was expressing themselves for sure. The drums, the power, the piano piece comes out of nowhere. The build up to what we think is going to be that same drop that we got early on isn't. It's that piano hook, and then the elements with the elephant. Like Timbaland still does that stuff.
Crazy sound.
Just crazy stuff where you're throwing everything at it, but yet it still really ends up being a really good creative record. It's dope. I love it. I mean, it's not my sound, but I get it, and it's got all the bottom, it's got all the drops, it's got good creativity. Again, I'm gonna say it. That's ready for a vocal too. It could be like it could be a rap on there. It could be, I could hear. It could be a full on, pretty girl, melodic and beautiful. It could. I mean, it's wide open to a vocal for sure. But really well done, Avicii.
Yeah. I mean, great job. Great, fantastic job. I think the thing that impacts me most about the song, first of all, it's produced really well. Again, low end bass sounds really good. Lots of weight to the low end. When I do lots of mentoring and we do lots of these types of events, weight and low end is something people struggle with. This has a lot of good punchy low end weight. So great job. But the thing that blows me away most is there's so much going on in this record that there's so much time that was spent. You can listen to how much was put into it, from the elephant sounds. There's some drum fills. There's a drum fill kind of in the second drop that's different than any other drum fill. So we're like, you made choices not just to put the same drum fill 3 times over the course of the record, but each little break you're creating these new moments and everyone feels new, but at the same time, it's not distracting, and you don't feel as a listener, you don't feel confused. You don't feel like, I'm confused. What's going on? There's this grooving, heavy, pumping beat. There's the piano, which I agree. I love the piano. But then there's so much going on, but it still is consistent. And that, as a producer and as a creative, that's hard to do. It's hard to make complex tracks like this sound, I don't want to use the word simple, but kind of simple. And I mean that as a compliment. There's cohesion, there's cohesion in the beat. There's cohesion in the melodic content throughout with different elements. But it's those fills and those details that really set this thing apart. And I think, again, because we don't just want to sit here, we want to and say, oh, great job, good luck. No, I think my only nitpick is some of those details, like the big drum fill. My favorite one is after that second drop. I would maybe spend a little time bringing a little more clarity to those. Okay, so I don't mean necessarily volume, but there are some that sound a little more detailed than others, and I would just go through and just really make sure each one is kind of matched in clarity, even though they're different drum fills and different little elements. Make sure there's a consistency in the clarity of them, so that when they happen, even though they're different, they're all in this consistent sonic frequency pocket, if that makes sense, right? But I mean, it's all there. The ingredients are there, and this is like 99.999% there. It's really 100% there. Again, my only tiny nitpick would be to make those details just a tiny bit more clarity. So that's kind of it.
So yeah, we can go if you want on the
Next one, number 3. Okay.
Captain Charlie.
Yeah.
Captain Charlie. Oh, it's actually a DJ Brandon record.
DJ Brandon and Lady V.
And Lady V, yeah.
Yeah.
Sent a couple records to us.
Yeah, these were very cool. So we're gonna listen to this one and talk about it. But here we go.
DJ Brandon and Lady V on the ones and twos. Brandon and Lady V on the ones and twos.
Yeah. Summer vibes.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Major Lazer, it immediately, you know, the shake of it, right? It's a cool, fun, easy listening record. I love the percussion. I love the bass line. The little chanty vocal is fun. Tough not to move your shoulders to it. A critique would be probably cut it down another 16 bars, that kind of outro. Don't oversell the close. You know, you had us. It was great. It kind of went on a little too long from a listening point of view. And then the other critique is, where do you want this record to be? Is it a streaming record? Is it a club record? To me, it's a streaming record. Hence the reason why I would say, you know, cut off a little bit of that tail end so that we can, what you want people to do on a streaming record, of course, is to play it again, play it again, play it again. Not just for a commerce reason, but because it's an infectious record and you want people to continue listening. But you know, records like Tom Menzie, Clooney, Hugel are doing very, very well with this percussion stuff. Almost sounded like a bit of a old school Bob Sinclair when he was doing that percussion stuff.
Yeah.
Which was great. But if you're gonna make this more of a club record, then I would probably pull up some of those names and some of those peak hour sounds and kind of A/B this to find ways to create a tiny bit more excitement out of it in the breakdowns, coming out of the breakdowns into the drop, make it have a little bit more power. But if it's just for a really cool, easy listening record, like our Major Lazer kind of reference that I said, then yeah, chop off a little bit of that tail end. Give me just the really good, great parts and make it infectious because it is. And let us want to play that over and over again. But all around a good record. Good job.
Yeah, the vibe and the energy is so fun from the beginning. The beat, the programming, the vibe of it is just fun. So I think, again, talking back to what we talked about with your target, like the target of this genre and the target of the vibe is really great. And by the way, if you see me punching on my phone, I'm just making a couple notes. I agree with Stephen on the length. Now, perhaps this is a DJ version, an extended version, totally fine, but cut it down. This would be an awesome radio edit and fun record to really cut down for more of that streaming vibe, more of that infectious, shorter, version and still have maybe this DJ extended version, you know. I think the pianos
Oh,
can
a
come
little bit
up.
more muscle.
Yeah, I think the pianos could be louder. I think the piano and the keys could maybe have a little more compression. They could be a little more present in the mix. Um, but the biggest technical comment is the vocals need to be more clear. So the vocals need to come up, not just in level, but maybe level in compression. And then, you know, in whatever platform you're making this track, maybe do some automation and some volume rides. But that vocal needs to sit a little bit more on top. A little bit. I was kind of struggling to make out the lyric, and you can hear it, but I just don't think it's having that impact as a vocal should. It should sit more on top. A minor note that I will say, but I'm not sure of yet, is the bass. The low end sounds good. It's a little boomy. So I wouldn't change the production. I wouldn't change the boominess. I would maybe just pull the level down a tiny, tiny bit on the low end, those boomy basses. Okay. Now, if you're DJing this record and playing it out on a bigger system and it sounds good, then forget what I said. That would be a test drive scenario where you're gonna have to test drive it and see, does the low end feel too much or not. I could go either way. If it is a little too much, it's barely. So that's why I say that with a grain of salt. But big things are vocals come up and the keys come up. Otherwise, this is a super fun track.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Nice. Right.
mm,
Next.
Next one. So we have Adrenaline.
Who's the artist?
Um,
Rumi Estef?
yeah, let us know if you're here. I'm going to mute and we're going to listen
The
loud. So,
track is called Adrenaline.
yeah, it's a melodic techno. Here we go. This should be fun.
So nice.
You're on.
Yeah, this is what a vibe. What a vibe. Whether you're driving in your car and just holding on with two hands, or you are in a nightclub at peak hour. I mean, Boris Brejcha, Monolink, Ben Balmer, you know, some names that pop up in my brain. Even Armin van Buuren when he's playing like kind of nasty, very, very Armada record. I really see it being that. This is a perfect example of a record that once you get that vibe, you just kind of let the record finish itself. You almost want to not overproduce this record. Some of those synths at the end that had so much tension, it was perfectly tension and then release. Tension, release. The breakdown, I mean, very, very 2025 with the arrangement, with the sounds, lots of tension, and then like some sparkles where it released and we could kind of like get fun again. Yeah, one of my favorite, most well produced all around records so far in the bunch, honestly. Very, very well done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
Very well produced. The vibe is awesome. Two small comments moving to the technical. That siren, there's a siren that comes in. I think that could get a little bit more attention. I think you could raise that up a little bit. I think it grabs your attention and then it's gone, which is super cool. Great production choice. Great, you know, being patient, not like rinsing it out 10 times, but make it more impactful. To punch that up a little bit. And there were a couple fills, drum fills were produced and sequenced very, very well. Again, I'd maybe add a tiny bit more detail to some of those where they don't like jump out and scream for too much attention, but they're just a little bit more in clarity and kind of punch for some of those fills where they're still tucked away, but they really have that crispness to it. But my biggest comment really, because this track, because you could do neither of those things, like, and the track is rock solid, but I think a boost in some of the top end will help a little bit of the tonal balance. So if I'm going to mute my microphone again, and I'm going to play a tiny clip of this, and I have an EQ where I'm just going to boost 5 dB, shelving at around 6K, and you're just going to hear this brightness, okay? And it's going to be maybe a little bit too much, but you're going to get this idea of what I think could really just help some of the details. So let me just play this for a few seconds and you'll get what I'm talking about. And you're going to hear it. I'm going to A-B it. So you'll hear it start without it, then I'll turn it on, then I'll turn it off, then I'll stop. Super subtle, okay? But that was A-Bing it a few times on and off. It's very, very subtle, but hopefully you're Roman, that you're here and you're listening. But even those that aren't, what I want to point out is the subtleness of this top end. It's extremely subtle, but when you really A-B it, it just helps that detail.
Yeah, it's
I know
perfect.
it might have been hard knowing when I was A-Bing it, but hopefully you heard a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Awesome.
And
All right, next one.
Thank you.
Luxury Life.
Yeah, this is Luxury Life. Alex Key was, I think, the submission. So here we go.
super, super well produced. Love all the sounds. Joji, Moon Loop, I took a note of, Sleeper Cell. These are like really impactful lo-fi artists that come to mind. It was super, super well produced. That middle section there was just about to be a tad bit too long. 8 bars, maybe you could cut before that last breakdown, but the last breakdown did come at the perfect time. I'm just talking arrangement here, and then it comes out to that last drop. I liked it. It's a really good tune. It's very, very well produced. That synth wave, yeah, very, very well produced, sonically, production wise, and very creative. And our first lo-fi tune, which was cool. We can listen to those records all day long. So very monotonous, very infectious, and a good record. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, again, I mean, super solid, sounds great. The melodic content, all the writing was done very well. The low end, the top end, the tonal balance was pretty rock solid. Okay. As I was listening, you know, I was listening to the low end, listening to the top end. You could make micro tweaks to that, but I just really don't think it's necessary. I think it's really super solid. I think some of the creative arrangement pieces that Steven said, it's just a super solid track. It's done. The length is great. I mean, there's a lot in there. The arrangement's good. It's short. There's a lot going on. The production is really, really well. My only technical comment is that it's very loud, which is fine, but we are getting a little bit of clipping. There's a little bit of overload on the peaks. We're getting like a plus, you know, 0.1 or 2. We're also getting a little true peak clipping. So I'm sure that that you're you know aware of these types of metering, but I'd be careful with those overloads because when you're dealing with stuff online, even a tiny bit of overload, especially on the true peak, can translate into it not sounding as crisp and having those digital artifacts. So that's really it. So I'd be careful. I'd protect that peak a little bit more. What you want to get it is like, you know, -2, 3, 4 at a peak level. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. And you know what I'm talking about. But we are getting a tiny bit of overload on the meters, you know. Good thing is it's not translating in distortion as we listen, and there's not a like overt problem. But when you see the red, especially in true peak on some of your meters, as you're uploading it around the internet, it can translate differently as people download and listen to it and stream it, because remember, streaming is a digital conversion process, and so sometimes it has issues even with a tiny bit of clipping. And I don't mean like soft clip and distortion that we want, like the richness. I mean literally going over 0 dB. That's what I'm talking about. That's my only technical note. Otherwise, super fun, super well produced track.
Yeah, interesting. All right.
One more.
Yeah.
One more.
Last one.
Last one.
Here we go.
Okay.
Baby distant, she don't call like before, but she still pull up, yeah. When it's got up us too far, she say she don't miss me, I hear by now. That look in her eyes got me calling her bluff. Tell me she done, that she dressing my tea, pouring her bar like she still wanna see the way we move, girl. I don't believe we break and we bend. Had this song on repeat, yeah. Holding on tight, thinking you'll come back. Baby, why you acting funny? You know you love me. Stop acting funny. Baby, why you acting funny? You know you love me. Stop acting funny.
Wow.
This is finally our first, you know, catchy full vocal, which was nice. Not maybe a full vocal, but this is what I said about Jiggler and a VC, sort of a complete project. I think I would have liked the backing track. I probably would have said, first off, very, very well produced, very creative, perfect.
Yeah.
Don't really have any tweaks on any arrangement. It's the kind of record that you want to play over and over and over again, which is cool. It's just got a good vibe, a good mellow. I mean, like an Erica Badu you hear on even a Macy
Yeah.
Gray on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like it's like it has a real smoky coffee house vibe, but it's got enough kind of lo-fi pop to it where you want to jam on it. But what I really want to talk about is that vocal really made that record to me. So it probably would have been like me saying put a vocal on it, but it really became a full, complete production when that vocal came on it. So my kind of lesson here is when you got a really good backing track, don't be afraid to throw some vocals on it. You can always keep the backing track and release it as an instrumental, whatever you want to do. But this became a very complete record to me with that vocal, and it was just enough. Yeah, and it was that record that I would love to hit the space bar and play it again. Good job.
Yeah. Super fun track, super catchy. It's vibey. I mean, it is super vibey and groovy. The samples were amazing. Those keys samples and some of those little hidden gem samples that were used in this track were all very, very well chosen, very well placed, very well produced and sequenced. Each one had its own little pocket. They weren't stepping on each other with the vocal. And on top of that, the fact that there is a full vocal, but there's all these little details, is a very good, produced track, great decision making on all that stuff, and still allowing a full vocal to sit on top of all these sample details. Earlier in our listen, I was talking about high-end frequency textures that fill this upper frequency. This track has great examples of that. There's like this vinyl scratchy thing, this texture that's going throughout. It's not vying for your attention, it's not distracting you, but it's just allowing that upper frequency exciting that's helping the tonal balance. So great job there. There's also these like bell details and some sound effects. Again, very top end. So they're above the vocal. They're not competing with the vocal, but they're offering you this tonal balance that's not drawing too much attention. It's not like a bunch of cymbal crashes. It's these little details. So that's a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier, where you can find some of these sonic textures that sit in the upper frequency range that don't draw too much attention, but they allow for better tonal balance from low to high. So excellent job on that. Again, another comment that I am not convinced it's needed. Just as a curiosity, I would be curious to hear a little more detail and enunciation, not in the performance, but in the processing of the vocal. Maybe there could be a little bit more clarity on that. But at the same time, as I'm listening to it, I'm like, wow, I really think maybe I want to hear this vocal a little bit more. At the same time, it's so vibey, and the effects that are on the vocal do such a great job of giving it a vibe that there'd probably be a better chance that if we were in the studio, we'd play with that and be like, no, it's losing the vibiness. So the minute that it loses the vibiness, forget what I said. It's just a curiosity. Because it is a full vocal, I want to kind of lean into the lyrics a little bit more, or maybe kind of catch a vibe of what's being said. But the vibe is so strong that maybe
It's
not.
a good example of patience too. The antithesis of patience is an overproduced record, right? Where we feel like we have to add more, and more is not always more. More sometimes weighs it down, and it would have lost its whole vibe. So there was a very well matured track for me where, again, some of these records finish themselves and we feel like we have to overproduce them because they're, you wake up the next day, which is a thing that we always do, like listen to it in the car, wait 8 hours, let your ears rest, listen to it the next day and say, I gotta do a different version of that. No. It's done. So I just loved the maturity and I loved the patience in the record too. And I think that's a big thing because we can overproduce and overprocess tracks.
Oh yeah, it's so easy.
Yeah.
It's so easy to do that. It's well said, and I agree. Last comment. This is the shortest song we had at 1:34 ish, but bang for the buck, it's awesome. So here's a good example of a 1:34 piece of music. Now, if it's aimed for Pixabay and like
Spotify.
a TikTok-y kind of like shorter clip. Even on Spotify, this thing could live, but this is a good example of a minute and a half chock full of amazing stuff that doesn't sound overproduced. It keeps your attention the whole time, and very well done. You're not bored. You just want to listen again, to be honest.
Yeah, you want it on loop. So
Yeah,
great.
for sure. And that's the goal. Like, leave them wanting more. So
Totally.
there you
All
go.
right.
Cool. That was fun. Thanks, guys. Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
Yeah. So what's next? This is a special part that I said we will share with you guys. So first of all, thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us. As I said before, we will upload this webinar on YouTube so you can watch it again or share it with others. And some of you might know, but for those that don't, this webinar with FaderPro founders is part of a partnership that also includes a contest, blog interview, and community work. So if you want to participate or check out the great prizes that they are offering, please scan the first QR code and it will take you to the Pixabay Contest Hub. Also, we hear it all the time that it's very difficult to get started or to keep going in the industry, but hey, it doesn't have to be this way. You can try today FaderPro for free for 30 days, which is a perfect amount of time to see how valuable it is. And you can do so by scanning the QR code on the right. Is there anything else you would like to add, Lee and Vincent, to this?
That was wonderful. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, so that's all for today. We hope you found this webinar helpful and interesting. Huge thanks to Lee, Vincent, and the FaderPro team, and to all of you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time, and take care. We wish you all the best in your music career.
Thanks,
Send us your
everybody.
demos. Let's go.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, looking forward to the contest now.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you,
Bye,
guys.
everybody. See ya. Bye.